Hey everyone, it's Gina and welcome back. I have a brand new tutorial to share with you guys today. This is for a lovely beaded pendant that comes from materials that came in the Midnight Melody Winter box by BeadingSchool. I just shared that unboxing video. If you want to check one video back on my channel, you can see that for yourself. I've got some of the materials laid out here and I really love how this pendant came out. I also have an example of how you can add that to a little bit of a beaded portion for a necklace. Today though, we're just going to actually complete the pendant itself. I will have this Midnight Melody box linked and listed down below, as well as all the materials you'll need in order to complete one of these pendants. And you should be able to pick up these materials separately at BeadingSchool as well. So as a little rundown before we get started, you can see here I've got some 6mm round beads, some True to Fire polish, some Miyuki half Tila beads, 3mm rounds, 15-0 seed beads, 11-0 Delicas. We've got a little crystal sew-in setting and also one of these lovely crystal spacer beads they included in the box that I have added to the top kind of as a bail that we'll stitch in. So if you'd like to make this pendant along with me today, I will be using the 6-pound 0.006 inch diameter fire line. You could use anything comparable to that, and I'll be using a size 11 beading needle. Go ahead and thread your needle with a comfortable length of beading thread, and we will jump into this tutorial. Alright, so first I'm going to take my needle and sew directly up through one of those holes back there behind our sew-on setting. And I'm going to pull my thread and leave a 4 to 6 inch tail that we will weave back in a little later, and just hold this with my fingers in place. And we're going to pick up 3 15-0 seed beads, sewing directly back through the same hole that we just exited, and getting those seed beads situated just like that. So now we've got our working thread coming out of the same hole that our tail thread is coming out of, and we're going to repeat what we just did pretty much. We're going to pick up 3 new 15-0s and return directly through the same hole we just exited, and pull these beads tight so they sit into place just like this on the opposite side. Now we're going to take our thread, our needle, and just sew directly through that next hole back there in the sew-on setting. And that little bit of thread that's going to sit right here will be covered, so you won't even see that, but it gets us in place to complete these other 2 sections just like we did before, picking up 3 15-0s, returning through the same hole, pulling these beads tight, taking a moment to just get those to sit how we want, like that. And then we're going to pick up 3 more 15-0s, return through the hole we're exiting, and this time you can actually proceed through the hole on the left or right, it really doesn't matter, of that little picot on the opposite side, and then continue on so that you're coming out of the 15-0 on the far right side, just like this. All right, so now you can pull out 4 of your half Tila beads, and I've got 8 of these little gold crystal rounds. What we're gonna do coming out of this 15-0 here is pick up one of our rounds, a half Tila, and pick up another round. And once you have those on your needle, you can sew directly through the 15-0 at the tip of the next picot that we get to around the sew-on crystal, and just pull those in place, and you have something like that. We're going to do that 3 more times all the way around our beadwork. So coming out of this 15-0, once again we're going to pick up a round bead, a half Tila, and another round, and sew directly through the 15-0 at the peak of the next 3 15-0s, and pull tight, and also keep some tension on that tail thread as well. And we're going to repeat this 2 more times. this last one, we're going to go through our 15-0, and you can continue sewing through the next round bead. And half Tila and the next round bead. Just go ahead and give that a nice pull so everything feels tight and in place. And here's a look at what we have so far. All right, now that we're coming out of this round here, I've pulled out some of my Delica beads, those beautiful blue ones. I'm gonna pick one up, sew through the next crystal round, half Tila, and the next crystal round. And repeat that 3 more times. Just popping one of those Delicas in place in between each of those pairs of crystal rounds. Pulling that tight, and we're gonna exit from one of those new Delica beads that we just added. Here's what we have. It's coming along nicely, and we're gonna just keep adding some beads around what we have here. We're gonna now work with some of our 15-0s again. We're gonna pick up 2 of those, 1 Delica and 2 15-0s. And then return through the Delica and continue sewing through the half Tila and those 2 crystals as well. Come out of the next Delica bead and pull these beads tight so you have something like this in place so that we can keep adding some beads around. So again, coming out of that Delica, we're going to pick up 2 15-0s, a Delica, and 2 15-0s. So back through the Delica, through the crystal, half Tila, crystal, and also the following Delica bead. We've got 2 more to do. Just take a moment and pull all that tight after each addition. And we're on our last one. I'm gonna go through these beads. And through the Delica. And then I'm gonna sew up through these next 2 15-0s that we had just added. And I'm gonna sew through the Delica there at the peak, which gets us in place for our next step. And here's a look at what we have so far. Yet again, pulling all that tight, including the tail thread, so all that has come together. And actually, what I'm going to do right now is add a needle to this tail thread, weave that back in a little bit, and then trim that off, and then we'll pick back up coming out of this Delica bead with our working thread. Okay, so I have pulled out my 6mm rounds, and what we can do now is just pick one up and sew directly through the open hole of the half Tila that comes up next. Pick up another round and then sew through the Delica bead at the peak of the next picot, and repeat that all the way around till we have 8 beads in place. So picking one up, going through the open hole of the half Tila, picking one up, going through the Delica bead, and making sure you pull snug within reason after each addition of these round beads. 3 more to go. Picking one up, going through the Delica. Then we're going to complete our last side. So I'm going to go through the Delica and get that in place first and just hold that whole thing with my fingers while I pull one final time. And I love how that all sits together and really gets those half Tila beads nice and flat and stretched out and starts to really hone in on that shape that we're looking for. We're going to continue going through the next 6mm round bead. And then in between each of those sections, we've got some other beads to add. So right here, over top of this half Tila, we can go ahead and pick up a Delica, a 15-0, and one more Delica. With those 3 beads on, we can sew through the next 6mm round. We have something like this. And then in this next section, we're going to be picking up one of our crystal rounds and sewing through the next 6mm. So let's repeat that all the way around now. Delica, 15-0 Delica, sew through the next 6mm round, and then pick up another crystal round and sew through the next 6mm. Just like that. I'm going to grab some more beads. I'm going to keep going with these seed beads. All right, so I wanted to end that step with my needle coming out of one of these 6mm beads that comes just before one of those half Tilas. Once we're there, we can start adding in some of our 15-0s to embellish the top a little bit. We're gonna pick up 3 of those and then sew through the crystal, the Delica bead. We'll just do those 2 at first. So we're sewing in the other direction, adding 3 of these 15-0s in place right here. Coming out of this Delica, I'm also going to sew through the next crystal bead. Just bending that slightly to get my needle through easier. I'm going to pick up 3 more 15-0s and then sew through the 6mm above, going this time the other direction. So we're kind of looping around and pulling those other 3 seed beads in place. Gonna sew through the crystal. And over top of those little gold rounds, we're gonna add a few other beads. I'm gonna pick up one of those True Two silver matte beads, a 15-0, and another 2mm. So with those 3 on, gonna sew through that next crystal again. The same one we're coming out of actually. And the next 6mm, just like that. And I'm gonna sew through the Delica, 15-0 Delica, and the next 6mm bead. And I'm gonna sew through the next crystal in 6mm and come out of the 6mm that we get to next that comes right before this half Tila. And we're gonna repeat what we just did, which is picking up 3 15-0s, sewing back through the crystal and the Delica and the next crystal and pulling that tight, picking up 3 15-0s, and then sewing back through that 6mm above, pulling those into place. We're going to go through the next crystal round and pick up a 2mm, a 15-0 and a 2mm. So back through the same crystal, through the 6mm. Make sure you pull those beads in place so they're sitting around the crystal. And then sew through the next 3 seed beads, the next 6mm, the next crystal, and the next 6mm, and we're in place to do that again. So now coming out of that crystal, I'll add my little beaded section above that. I'm going to keep sewing through these beads, coming out of that next one. We're going to add our 15-0s in place in this last section. You pull those in place, you can see it completes that little star shape in the center. And we're going to add our beads around the top of this one. Sewing through that crystal and the next 6mm. And now we've got one other little thing to do before we do the bail. I'm going to sew down through those 3 15-0s that we added in that previous step. I'm just making my way to the other section, just following the thread path through the beads, going through the crystal now, going through the Delica and the crystal that we get to next, up through the next 3 15-0s. And with our needle coming out of these 3 here on the left, we're going to add a little 2mm to the top of each peak. We're going to pick one up and sew down through the next 3. And if you can get through the next crystal, go for it. If not, just go through the 3 15-0s. Don't want to be too ambitious. And then follow your thread path, going through the next crystal, Delica, crystal, and up through the next 3 15-0s. And we're going to add on another little 2mm at the top in between those sections, and continue doing that until we have one on top of all 4 of those areas. Just making our way around. And down. And pulling tight. And we're coming out of the top of that fourth section where we're going to add in our final 2mm. Just like that. So you could actually use this component just as it is in all sorts of different ways. You can make earrings with this, whatever you want to do. But what I'm going to show you how to do today is I'm going to show you how to sew in that beautiful little crystal rhinestone fluted bead that we got in the box. We actually received 2 of them, and I just thought that would make a really beautiful bail if it could be connected somehow. I'm just trying to carefully go through this last Delica, and I'm going to go up through these 2 15-0s and over, because I want to be coming out of one of these picos that surrounds the little gold crystal bead. I'm going to sew back through this way, and I'm going to go up through that 2mm bead. Just like that. So that's the point where we're going to add on this little tube bead, and we're going to need to work with some more of our 15-0s. So I'm going to grab some of those and I'll be right back. All right, so coming up out of the 2mm bead, we're going to pick up 16 of our 15-0s. Double check that you have 16, but with this Miyuki size bead, these 15-0s, they all vary slightly, but in this size, that was the right amount to go around the outside of this bead. It is going to be specific to that because you really want these to sit snug around the component so that it stays in place. So I have strung on the 16. I'm just placing that bead right over top. We're going to do 2 strips, one on either side of that little center section. And once we have those on, we're going to sew directly through the same 2mm bead. And I'm just holding it like this because it's probably easier for you to see it. And we're going to tighten and pull those 16 around that bead like this. So with that in place, we're going to sew directly over through the crystal bead under there, keeping that tight, and we're going to sew up through the 2mm on the other side, and we're going to do pretty much the same thing. We want to pick up 16 15-0s. Pull them down, and I'm going to flip this over so you can see these are going to wrap around the front of the other side of this bead. We're going to return through the same 2mm, and as we pull this tight, those beads will form a loop and tighten up around the other side, just like that. Now I'm going to sew through that crystal again, very gently, and then give this a good pull so it's nice and snug. We don't want that going anywhere. And we can reinforce this very carefully. Those 2mm beads are very fragile, and when I started this little adventure on this pendant, I did break one, and it didn't even feel like it was that tight. So just be careful as you're going through those 2mm beads again, especially. And on my example piece, I also did tack down the top of this section together. So if you want to do that, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm coming out of the 8th bead on the right. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We can also go down through the 8th bead on the left. You can go through a couple of them if you want, and just tack down a couple of beads together. That will strengthen that even more. So your little bead there definitely isn't going to slip out or go anywhere, which it shouldn't anyway once this is tightened up. So I'm just continuing on the back, sewing through those little 15-0s. And you know what, to be on the safe side, I'm not going to go back down through that 2mm or this one right now. I'm just going to go directly up through the seed beads. Since it's the back, that's fine. And I'm just sewing back down through the 16 on the other side, heading towards the front again. And down, going through the 2mm there, pulling that tight, that feels good. Sewing through the crystal. And we can go ahead and make a little knot right there in between the crystal bead and the 6mm. Continue sewing through a few more beads. Just a few at a time. Gonna make another little knot right here. And go through that next 6mm. And then I'm going to trim off my excess working thread, and we are done with this pendant. So here's a look at our finished piece. I hope you enjoyed making this. And once again, here's an example of the pendant actually strung on to a beaded portion for a necklace. I just did a short portion there and then attached the rest to chain using some bead stringing wire and some other beads from the Midnight Melody box by Beading School. And as a reminder, if you would like to pick one of these up, I do have this box linked below, and you can pick that up at Beading School, as well as a lot of other lovely materials there. You can have fun checking out their shop. And that does it for today's tutorial. Please feel free to leave me a comment down below, especially if you gave this a try. I'd love to hear about it. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope to see you guys again real soon. And until next time, have a fabulous rest of your day. And as always, happy beading.